Mine own darling, I long to be in my sweetheart's arms, whose pretty doves I trust shortly to kiss. These were the words written 500 years ago by King Henry VIII to Anne Boleyn when his passion for her and her enticing bosom was at its peak. If only this tree could talk. Planted in the 1200s, it stood here, growing quietly as the world changed around it. By the early 1500s, it had become a sturdy oak, watching over the newly rebuilt Greenwich Palace on the banks of the River Thames. In 1491, its branches may have swayed gently as cheers rang out from palace windows, celebrating the birth of Prince Henry, later known as King Henry VIII. Today, the royal palace is no more, and this tree is long dead. But in its day, it was rooted in the heart of royal drama, and I can't help thinking about the secrets it holds. In 1516, this oak bore silent witness as Queen Catherine of Aragon gave birth, not to the male heir Henry so craved, but to a girl, Princess Mary. 10 years later, the tree's leaves stirred as Lady Anne Boleyn danced beneath them, laughing, teasing, captivating King Henry, who was slavering after her in fervent pursuit. At 24, Anne knew just how to wind this 39-year-old married suitor around her finger with her vixenish ways. Anne wasn't the ideal court beauty. Her skin was sallow, punctuated with moles, her figure slight, her hand bore an extra nail, called by some her devil's teat. But none of that mattered. Henry was lost in her dark eyes, her grace, her wit, and her sexual promise. At a grand tournament in 1526, the solemn joust, here at Greenwich, Henry, bristling with longing, unveiled a secret banner. It read, "Declare I dare not." But Anne had a word of her own. "No, no, my lord, you have a queen. I would rather lose my life than my honesty. Your mistress I will not be." Henry's obsession didn't wane. Over 7 long years, Anne denied him, and he changed the world to have her. Breaking from the Roman Catholic Church, he formed the Church of England just to make her his wife. They married in January 1533. By September, the tree heard screams from the palace once more. Oh joy! The baby had survived. Oh no. It was another girl. Anne loved her daughter, Elizabeth. She tried to keep her close as much as possible, but royal custom dictated that the child spent much of her time in another household. After 3 miscarriages and no male heir, Anne, once so powerful, had lost her charm for Henry. She was just 33 years old. As the sun rose on the 30th of April, 1536, it spelt the beginning of the end for Anne. Her enemies' knives were sharpened. Anne returned to her rooms after walking her dogs. Something felt very, very wrong. A few days earlier, she'd exchanged a few pleasantries with a young court musician, Mark Smeaton. These pleasantries had led to his arrest. Under torture, he'd confessed to adultery with the Queen. The next day, Queen Anne watched the May Day Joust, seated beside the king, unaware it would be her last moment with him. As Anne watched her brother George leading the challenge on horseback, a man turned up with a message for the king. Henry immediately gathered 6 of his men and strode off to the riverbank to depart for Westminster. Queen Anne Boleyn was arrested, accused of 22 cases of adultery, one even with her own brother. Lies, every one. 2 days later, she was taken by barge to the Tower of London. She never had the chance to say goodbye to her 2-year-old daughter Elizabeth. On the 19th of May, 1536, a specially imported French swordsman mounted the temporary wooden scaffold at the Tower of London. With one swipe, he sliced off the head of Queen Anne Boleyn. Elizabeth often returned to Greenwich as a child. Sometimes she would picnic beneath this very tree. We can only wonder what thoughts she had of the mother who loved her so deeply, but she never truly knew. The tree became known as Queen Elizabeth's oak. It finally died in the 1800s. Now, only a rotting trunk remains. But as for the stories it watched unfold, they still whisper in the breeze. Thank you for joining me for the story of this historic tree. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And for more stories of Londoners past, plus the occasional tree or cat, subscribe to my channel. Hello London Life. Until next time, bye.